Well, good afternoon, and welcome to the principal's office. My name is Principal Edward Gordon, and my guest today is Mr. David Jones. Good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, Principal Ed. That was a pretty catchy little tune you played right there.
Oh, yes, none other than David Jones on trumpet. That was, as I was sitting backstage, it brought a lot of energy to me. And I think that I'm going to have to commission you to do an introduction for the the principal's office, because I just love the energy that you brought to the show already this afternoon. So thank you very much. And we're going to get into a conversation later, David, about the work that you're doing in terms of your jazz music. So welcome again to the principal's office. I'm excited that you're here today. And I'm going to get started with just a little introduction about you, and then we're going to get this show on the road. So everyone, today we have Mr. David Jones. He's a native of Fairfield, Alabama, who currently resides in Jackson's Gap, Alabama. He is married to his wife, Robin, and they have two children, DJ and Aaron, and have 7 grandchildren. David has 30 years experience in education. He's retired in 2016. He was an athletic coach for both football and basketball. He is a member of the Baldwin County Middle School Coaches Hall of Fame. At one time, he had a 25-game winning streak and 5 straight county championships for football. David is a John Maxwell Leadership Certified Speaker since 2016. He's a founder of David Jones Leadership Consultant, specializing in transformational leadership training for high school and college athletics teams and businesses. He is a professional jazz trumpeter and vocalist. We already heard some of his great music, and you can listen to his work on David Jones Jazz Radio on Pandora. So welcome again to the show, Mr. David Jones.
It's an honor for me to be here. And thank you for the opportunity. It's great to have, you connect with people on social media, and I connected with you on Facebook. It's wonderful. I wouldn't have known who in the world you were without Facebook, and I listened to some of your podcasts, and I'm honored to be a guest today.
Wonderful. I'm excited that you're here to be able to share your experiences and the work that you have done and continue to do around education. And let's just get started. Just open up and just share your story, share your journey into leadership and the work that you have done.
Well, I grew up in Fairfield, Alabama. My dad worked for the U.S. Steel Corporation, which was, a big corporation many, many years ago, and went to Fairfield High School. I've always wanted to go to Auburn University, but it wasn't in the cards. So I graduated from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. I started playing the trumpet in the 7th grade, and I played the trumpet through college, a little bit after college. And then when I started teaching, coaching, raising a family, I had to put it down. I just didn't have time. So I put it down for 27 years, picked it back up 11 years ago, and it's been quite the journey so far. I used to travel. I've played in Atlanta, New Orleans, Los Angeles, and played with a lot of great musicians, many of which you saw on that video. Opened for Aaron Neville, which was an incredible opportunity. And but now I play regionally in the Southeast. If I get the opportunity to travel, I will. But I stick pretty close to home. My wife's retired now. But my educational journey, I started out as a music major and just kind of got disillusioned with a lot of the classical music and all of that we were having to. I wanted to play Earth, Wind, and Fire in Chicago and Tower of Power and all that stuff. So I actually dropped out of college, joined a Christian singing group, and that's where I met my wife. And then we got married shortly after that and started our journey together, 43 years now. And then I've always been into athletics, played a lot of sports, and went back to school at UAB and finished. It took me a long time. I was working full time at a church, volunteer coaching. And I know you wanted me to give some advice on that later on in the show, and I will do that. But so finally, I got that degree in education and started my teaching and coaching career in 1986 and ended that in 2016. So that's kind of the short version of what my journey. It's been great. I still keep in touch with a lot of my kids today on social media. And that's the joy of doing what we do, is building those relationships and not just communicating, but connecting. Connection is the key. And we'll talk about that too, as well, when we get into some of the leadership concepts.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing parts of your journey. And I want to say congratulations on you and your wife, Robin, for marriage for 43 years. That is something definitely to be celebrated. There's another piece that came out based on your opening introductions about yourself and your story. For me, I started off as a music major at the University of South Carolina, and I taught for 6 years. And when I got into school administration, my time went away. And if you ask me to pick up my trombone right now, my lips will fall off. but I want to encourage those that have that talent, the hobby, in the arts. As much as possible, try to continue to create time to actually keep it going. Okay. Once you have that love and that passion, I've always, because I didn't practice anymore and didn't play full time and so forth, I always had that hunger and drive to support live music and live entertainers and so forth. But if we can give any advice and encouragement, try to carve out some time to stay with that passion and joy, because it's a part of you. And so many times life happens and we put it down to the side. So we definitely wanted to be able to keep it going throughout our life journey. But the other thing that I wasn't aware in terms of your story, in terms of you going to school, making the transition and coming back, that is inspirational for people to also hear and understand that sometimes you go through life and it might not go through and complete, like everyone wants to say, in the 4 years and you're done and so forth, but you still have that drive and it comes back to you and you get it done. Okay. Everybody's journey is their own journey. What God has for Principal Edward Gordon is different for David Jones. Okay. And we gotta live our own lives in our own path, but definitely, God is in control, and that's the direction, and it's already mapped out our life plan for each and one of us. So thank you for sharing these little tidbits so far, and it's definitely encouraging to me, and also I know for those in the audience as well. So let's get into your work in terms of education, what you taught, and also you can also segue into also the extracurricular work in terms of your journey in terms of becoming an athletic coach.
Sure. Well, I started out with a degree in K through 12 physical education. In the process, I also added a certification in English. And then late in my journey, it was kind of crazy. The last 5 years of my teaching, I taught high school health. And of course, I had to go through the Praxis program to get highly certified in health. And that wasn't easy. And a lot of people late in the journey, a principal, I was down on the Gulf Coast. It's very hot down there. And we had 1 week you were in the gym, and the next 2 weeks you were outside. We had 3 physical education teachers. And the football coach walked up from the high school and he said, "David, would you be possibly interested in teaching health at the high school? My health teacher's not certified in health, and he's getting sub pay. He's certified in PE. Would you guys swap?" And I said, "Yeah, can I start tomorrow?" It was about 90 degrees outside. I'm just pouring sweat. He said, "No, you got to, if you're not certified, you'll have to go through the Praxis." And I did that. And so my last 5 years were my best 5 years. I wish I'd been teaching high school health the entire time, but most of my career was teaching physical education to K through 12, and then coaching football and basketball. Now, here's the crazy thing about my football. You read my accolades about the Hall of Fame and the winning streak and the county championships. I never played organized football. I played some basketball, but I was under some strong mentors and teachers and learned the game of football. And middle school was my niche. I'd been a high school football assistant as well, but I really found my niche in middle school, developing those younger players to prepare for varsity, really concentrating on the fundamentals and developing a work ethic and all of that. So I pretty much stuck to football and basketball. My son signed with Auburn University for baseball out of high school, but he got drafted by the Tampa Bay Rays. And so when he got drafted by the Tampa Bay Rays in 2007, I stopped coaching football because I didn't want to do summer workouts all summer. I wanted to follow him, travel, watch him play baseball. And that's what kind of led into the jazz thing. I started thinking, I ought to do something a little different. I'm going to pick the horn back up. And like you with the trombone, I wanted to throw the trumpet against the wall. First time I picked it up and played for about 30 minutes. It was tough. Yes. But now, in the last 3 days, I've played 11 hours worth of music gigs. So, it's the mouth is a muscle. Mm-hmm. It comes back, principal. So pick that trombone back up and you'll figure it out. Yes. But yeah, 30 years in physical education and health, and football and basketball for most of that. So, and very rewarding. I never won a state championship, but we had some great teams, and I enjoyed building teams that had been down. I had several jobs that I took, principal, where I went into a place that had not had very much success and built some success. And that was always rewarding for me as well.
Yes. Yes. Can you please share with members of the audience in terms of how do you break into, or suggestions in terms of breaking into athletic coaching in our schools?
Sure. Well, what I did was life's all about relationships and connections. And that's where you really can make your mark. First of all, I would encourage anybody that wants to get into athletic coaching. And when I speak to students, I always speak to this. Find out what you're passionate about, what you're talented in doing, and what you would do for free if you could. Mm-hmm. And find out where those dreams and where your path is, your why, as Simon Sinek said. So if that's what you really feel like you're led to do, Don't worry about money. Don't worry about any. Les Brown said, "There's never a shortage of money. There's just a shortage of ideas, and how to do things." So what I did, I went to my home high school and I sat down with the football coach and I said, "Coach, I'm a student at UAB in education, and I want to get into athletic coaching. Is there any way I could volunteer?" And I started out volunteering at my home high school. And of course, that led into my first job was at my home high school, Fairfield High School. My first 3 years I spent there teaching and coaching, and then moved on to a head coaching position elsewhere. But work with people you know, people you believe in, and just a lot of guys may need to even start on a lower level, maybe coach in the youth leagues or rec leagues for a little while to get some experience. I was fortunate that these people knew who I was and they gave me a chance, and I'll forever be grateful for that. So just be resourceful enough to know that's what you want to do. Get out and meet people or work with people that you know, and anybody that knows you, especially if you were a former athlete, they'll give you a shot. So that was my story and my experience.
No, that's I appreciate you sharing with that. I mean, there's some things that you start off before you got into. I mean, get into the coaching. You were talking about understanding yourself in terms of your passion. What do you have talent in, and also if you weren't getting paid to do it, will that still wake you up in the morning? Will that still drive you? And because you need that. Okay, there's gonna be some tough times and challenging times. It's called life, even for things that you get paid for. Okay, yeah. But to continue to go through it, you're gonna have to have that passion to be able to bring you through those challenging times. You're gonna have mountaintop experiences as well as valley experiences as well, but your passion definitely brings you through. But you also talked about, it also gets into that servant leadership, volunteering, asking, how can you help? How can you support? And that creates opportunities for you to be to get experience, to get recognized, and then it leads into from that free opportunities of volunteering to that fee where you're actually getting paid and making that transition, which is really good. So I appreciate those words that you're sharing with members that are in the audience that are seeking opportunities to be able to get into athletic coaching. There's a couple of things that I want to go back to. And you mentioned that there was a sport that you were coaching that you never played. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm going to ask you this question. I know that wasn't a question I sent you earlier or so forth, but how does one coach when you never experienced it yourself? Okay. How do you coach professionals in other occupations and so forth if you've never done it? But what is that special sauce around coaching that allows you to do it when you didn't have that personal experience to do it?
I'm going to say this as humbly as I possibly know how to say it. A lot of times it's a gift that you have to connect and communicate. Now, my story was this. John Gilmore was the football coach at Fairfield High School. And I said, "Coach, I really want to coach basketball because that was my sport." And he said, "Well, David, I need you to coach football as well." I said, "Coach, I didn't play football." He said, "I'm not worried about that. You can do this." He said, "We run the split back veer and the 4-4 stack defense." And I knew what those were. Mm-hmm. So I got everything he had, the playbook, studied it, began to study those particular offenses and deep. And I knew football, from being around it a lot. And so it wasn't like now, if you asked me to coach soccer or hockey, I'm out. It's over with. But I knew enough football that was a kickstart for me. Mm-hmm. He was very, very supportive. We were on the sidelines for varsity games. I'd go attend varsity practice after my practice was over. And we ended up going, 13-3 in the 2 years that I coached the junior high football team at Fairfield with a county championship. And I had a very good assistant coach, Ren Aaron, who is now a pastor. He's retired like me. Mm-hmm. We met at UAB together. And all this happened while I was almost a full-time student at UAB. It was crazy. So you obviously have to know a little bit about the sport that you're going to coach, even if you didn't play it. Let's set that out there. But a lot of times it's a gift. We worked hard, especially on that level. I mentioned this earlier. On the junior high level, it's not so much about the X's and O's as it is fundamentals, learning the game. I mean, we were teaching guys how to put the football uniform on correctly in a lot of places that I coached, kids that had never played the game. So learning stance, start, techniques, all of the fundamentals of that sport is the most important thing. And I really, really honed in on those and concentrated on those. And we were very simple in what we did from an X and O standpoint, and built the confidence that those kids knew how to play the game correctly. And from there, they could get up on the varsity level and add lettuce and tomato and pickles and onions to that sandwich that we laid, with the meat and the bread.
That's great. I always, what you just described is that, you knew that these students had potential. Mm-hmm. And you as that coach, you're really pulling it out of them and letting them understand their potential. And also you mentioned a key word that effective coaches do, help build that confidence in them. Okay. That they know that they have great talent, they have great potential, that they're winners, that they're champions. And that is the confidence that you need on the athletic field, but also in life as well. And that's what great coaches do. So I thank you for sharing that. You mentioned about John Gilmore and Coach Gilmore, and I want to get into, coaches or mentors that influence your life. And you might say Coach Gilmore was that one, but if so, or there's another coach or mentor you want to mention, what is something that they taught you that has really influenced your career?
Well, my main mentor, and I didn't mention this to you either. This one may shock you as well. But in 95, I actually flew to Los Angeles and spent the day in the home of my main mentor, Coach John Wooden. And I had corresponded with him when I was an assistant coach, and we started writing letters back and forth. He would always write a handwritten letter back to me. And this is the head coach at UCLA, who's probably the greatest college basketball coach in the history of the game. And I will never forget the advice that he gave me in the first letter. I said, Coach, I really want to be a head coach. I'm ready. I just can't seem to get the opportunity. And he said, David, one thing that I always tell my players that don't get enough playing time that they think they deserve, I always say to them, I will prepare and perhaps my chance will come. And just preparing. So there I found myself and a coaching friend of mine, Tim Shepler, who's still coaching in Homewood, Alabama. We found ourselves sitting in the living room of John Wooden and literally spent the day with him. And we talked about basketball, but we talked about life. We talked about family. We talked about, what's important. And he broke everything down and made it so simple. So when you take the clutter out of it, it just really clarifies things, whether it's athletics, whether it's education, whether it's business. And so I learned from him that the most important thing was to love people and care about people and be a great teacher and connect. And that was the gist of my 30 years. I mean, I would have kids come back by my health class at Gulf Shores High School, and they would say, Coach, can I take your class again? And I said, nope, I had you for one semester. I kicked you out into the world. Go, be great. But it made me feel so good that these kids would come by and stick their head in the door. Coach, man, I want to take it again. At that point, and that's something else. One of the questions, I'm going to go ahead and handle this one since you asked it on the email. What is some advice that I could give to educators today? And here's what I will say. I hear so many educators say, I can't handle these kids. I can't. Here's the deal. Love these kids and connect with these kids. That's the most important thing. I mean, yeah, they're in there to learn math concepts. They're in there to learn health. They're in there to learn English, prepositions, and so forth. All of that's great, and that's what we're in the business for. But without that connection to these kids, it's a missing link. And I always valued and still value principal. I sat with one of my former players at this school, Fairfield, that I mentioned earlier. We hadn't seen one another in 40 years. I sat with one of my former players at the state basketball championships in Birmingham last month. I do radio for our high school athletic association. I do color commentary for our state basketball championships. And I got a chance to sit with him. And he said, Coach, I just want you to know what an influence you had on my life. And that I still pay attention to things you told me today. And this is 40 something years later. And that's, you can't put a price on that. You just can't.
Exactly. Love our students and also connect with them. And for them to be able to come back and want to be back in your classroom and also just to stay connected to you, you're definitely, showing evidence that love and connection makes a difference and goes a long way. So yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. And I didn't know that you were mentored by John Wooden. That's amazing. But
let me show you this. I don't know if you can see it or not.
I can.
That was 1995 in his living room. How about that?
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, there is some connection in terms of our work as well. Another of our mentors, Dr. John Maxwell, who's also mentored by John Wooden as well. And, it's always great. And I tell everyone, everyone needs a coach. Everyone needs a mentor. And it definitely, those influential people in your life are going to make a difference for you. Tell the audience about, what got you started with the John Maxwell team and Maxwell leadership.
Great. Before I start that, I want to tell you, I got to tell John that story about John Wooden at the certification that I went to. I did IMC in August of 2016.
Gotcha.
But my story with John Maxwell and the leadership, I was principal. I was sitting in my classroom late December of 2015. I was in my final year of teaching. I knew I was retiring in May. I had all of my prep work done for my last semester of teaching. Just sitting there in my classroom reflecting. And nobody else was up at the school. This was like December the 30th, and everybody was on break. And I just was scrolling through my phone, Facebook, and I came across a John Maxwell, promo video. And of course, I read a couple of his books, 21 Laws and Failing Forward, and I knew who he was. 30 minutes into that video, I said, that's what I need to be doing in my retirement, in my transition. And so contacted them, and of course, long story short, joined in 2016 August IMC, and I haven't been back to IMC. I'd like to go, but John lives in Atlanta now, which is 2.5 hours from my house. Mm-hmm. So every October I go to Live to Lead that he has there. It's 12 Stone Church. His John Maxwell library is there at 12 Stone Church. And so it's an easy ride for me over to Atlanta. And we spend, last year he had Eric Thomas, and he's had Ed Milet, and unbelievable speakers. And of course he speaks as well. So, but that's the greatest thing that I've ever done for my personal development, and kicked me off into the leadership speaking. You've done IMC, correct?
Yes, in 2019. Yes.
What year did you?
2019, August of 2019.
Fantastic. Yes. So we need to meet there sometime. That's what we should do.
I was just thinking about that, either there or Atlanta. So
Atlanta's just one day. It's great for me. But they sit you at tables, and you're with your table mates, and I still keep in touch with some of those guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it was hilarious because here I am, an educator, and the question was asked, what is your greatest fear as a leader joining the John Maxwell team? And almost every other one of the people at my table mates said, standing in front of people and speaking. And I'm going, are you serious right now? Because I've been doing that for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, David, what's your biggest fear? I said, my biggest fear is building a business from scratch, because I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a businessman. I'm an educator. So that's been the challenge for me, is building this business. Yeah. And they were all, petrified of standing up and speaking. Of course, the first thing I did was took Roddy's speaking course, on the platform. Yes. And I went through a lot of those, but John Maxwell is simple, but he's profound. And I love the story that he tells, Ed, of the guy that walked up to him and said, your stuff's good, but it's just very simple. And John said, it is. The concepts are very simple. The carrying out of those concepts is extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. And my favorite quote is, you can't lead others until you lead yourself. But the hardest, and I tack this on, the hardest person to lead is you.
Yes.
The hardest person to lead is this guy right here.
Yep.
Your hardest person to lead is you. And you can't lead other people until you lead yourself. So every morning, now that I'm on my schedule, every single morning I get up, fix the coffee, and I head into 2 or 3 different places in my home. And it's me and books for about 2 hours. It's the Word of God, the Bible, and then it's some great leadership books. And, one of the questions you asked me on the email was, what are some of the best books I've read? We can get into that. I've got several. But I spend the first 2 hours of my day learning, improving me. Good. And that's the key to me, to the leadership.
Yes. You mentioned that in making this transition in terms of business, we have to have systems in place in our morning routines and also our evening routines of being successful. And if you study successful people, they have these routines in place. And I appreciate you sharing a routine that you have, getting that morning coffee, but taking that 2 hours of reading and studying and pouring and developing yourself, so that when 9 o'clock happens or so forth, and you're out doing speaking and building your business and so forth, you've already poured into yourself what you need to continue the success. So that is great. And that's a great message for anyone in any career, any profession. You have to take time to develop yourself, lead yourself, and you have to have systems in place in the morning routines and also in the evening routines that are going to lead to your continuous success and progress. So that is really good. I want to jump in to talk a little bit about David Jones, leadership and consultant. Now, you went to the John Maxwell team. You were talking about this whole business and business development. What does David Jones, leadership and consultant, do for others?
Well, my niche is obviously still athletics, leading athletes. I have had the privilege to speak to Auburn University's baseball team. And I like to speak to high school athletic teams as well. And the other thing that I do that I love, and this is as much fun for me as the actual speaking, is developing the content. Now, obviously, even as a coach, we steal things from other coaches, right? As a speaker, we steal things. We get things from John or John Gordon, or we borrow things. But the joy for me is getting to know the people that I'm going to speak to. One of the first things that I like to do is to talk to the person that's bringing me in and ask them, what are the challenges? What problem can I solve? What direction do you want me to go? as a speaker that I can make an impact on, rather than just coming in with a canned speech or a signature speech, as they say. I love to develop my talks and my content. I have about 25 right now team talks for athletic teams that I developed myself. And as a book in the making, maybe. I've always wanted to do that. But and then businesses as well. I am going to be embarking real soon with our local Tallapoosa County Tourism. We're bringing in a lot of the CEOs of our hotels, management of our restaurants, and then we're going to trickle it on down to even the work staff. And we're doing hospitality training. And then they're bringing me in at the end of the lunch hour to do 30 minutes of leadership and personal development as that relates to, and you said it a minute ago, anything that you're in, your personal growth, development, and leadership, and how you approach that job or that team is the key. And are we interested in our agenda? Are we interested in other people's success? It's all about other people, point blank. So that's really my niche is developing leadership and personal development in business and in athletics as well.
Very good. So we're going to jump into 3 more areas before we end this broadcast, but let's talk about the books. What are you reading now that has been beneficial that you can share with the audience? And then we'll talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing in reference to professional jazz trumpeter in terms of music. So let's start with the books that you're reading right now.
The books, well, right now, I don't know if you've gotten it yet. I've got the new Maxwell book, The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication. And it's like John wrote that book for me. I mean, I've read just about all of his books, but this one, it's like he had David Jones. I'm going to write this one for David Jones. It's unbelievable. I'm also reading a book right now called The Power to Change by Craig Groeschel. He's a pastor, but he also does a leadership podcast. And it really delves into, and this is just for my own personal development. Mm-hmm. He really talks about training. The Apostle Paul talked about even in the Bible, he talked about the athletic training for those athletes and how we should train. But we should train to be the best person that we can be, because that trophy doesn't last very long, if you win that race. But the race of life, that lasts forever. And so how to train, it's a great book. I think one of the best leadership books that I have ever read that's not a Maxwell book is Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. He's the guy that did the TED Talk, Finding Your Why.
Yes.
Based on, in the military, the officers eat last. All of the troops go through the line first, and then the officers eat last. And it's just tons of examples of businesses that went belly up because of the lack of leadership from the top and how they treated their employees and how they ran their company. So I think Leaders Eat Last. Atomic Habits is another good book that I read. Can't remember the author, but great advice on, you said it earlier, building. People think of discipline as a negative word, but discipline is the power to do now what you want to have later, rather than those conveniences now. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, any Maxwell book. I like John Gordon as well. The Energy Bus was great. Mm-hmm. But I usually pick one or two that I read at a time. And so I'm reading right now John Maxwell Communication and the Craig Groeschel book, The Power to Change. So
very good. Well, thank you for sharing those great books and highlighting them with the audience. So let's transition. Let's talk about David Jones, the trumpeter, and the work you're doing. And also you can highlight your Pandora station as well.
Still on the coffee, Ed. Sorry.
No problem. It's so wonderful.
I decided to pick the horn back up in 2011. My dad played trumpet. I started playing trumpet in junior high, and I actually even played through college. And I was in a contemporary Christian band after college for a few years. And then when I started getting heavy into the coaching and teaching and raising a family, I just didn't have time, same as your trombone story, So I put it down. But you'd be amazed at the number of people at my gigs that say, man, I still have my trumpet, or I still have my flute, so you should pick it up. It's stress relief for me. Okay. Do I get paid for my music gigs? Yes. But it's stress relief for me. I always kid people, look, I taught school for 30 years. This is easy. But so I picked the horn back up. And when I lived in Montgomery, there was a jazz station, WVAS, the voice of Alabama State University. It's one of our historical Black colleges and universities. And they had a jazz station on campus there. And I started listening to that and just fell in love with the jazz. Of course, I do some Sinatra and some Miles Davis and some older stuff, but I really like to do a lot of the contemporary jazz. And I even do a lot of soul music, Champagne and Tower of Power and Shaka Khan and some of that. So, but I started doing gigs in 2012, and that was fun. I started writing. I had a Yamaha keyboard in my health classroom at Gulf Shores High School. And I would go up there late at night, and I started writing music again. I hadn't written a song in 30 years. So long story short, I wrote 8 original tunes, and there were 2 that I recorded from friends of mine that are on the CD. So my CD is David Jones, Beautiful Music. A shameless plug. It's on iTunes and CD Baby, Spotify. But we recorded that, and I had the flute player, Kim Scott, that was in the pictures in the video that you showed. She said, you really should, let me give you the name of my radio promoter. Mm-hmm. So I called this guy out in Laguna Beach, California. Long story short, 2 of those songs off that CD made the smooth jazz charts worldwide.
Wonderful.
And I said, my goodness, this is crazy. So, and I did the traveling thing, and we opened for Aaron Neville. That was a hoot. I've played with some great jazz musicians, A-list jazz musicians over the years. But right now, I just kind of stick around close to home and play. I have 6 gigs this week.
Boy, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So, and that's not typical. It's usually 2 or 3 a week. But my dear wife, she lets me get out and play the music, and I do have the Pandora channel, David Jones Jazz Radio, which is a really cool channel. Since I sing and play the horn, you get vocal and instrumental jazz on that station as well. So I would encourage anyone, if anyone wants to keep up with my music, the website on that video is no longer active. So I do everything through Facebook now, David Jones Music on Facebook, and then David Jones Leadership Consulting on Facebook. But the music is, I've met, I love playing the music, but I love meeting people as well. And I meet the nicest and most incredible people at a lot of my music gigs. And that's the joy of it as well.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that, portion of the work that you're doing in terms of music. So as we begin to round up this episode, I want a great opportunity for you to end with some parting words of encouragement, inspiration. Like I said, this show is broadcast and various educational stakeholders are actually listening to the broadcast. But I'd like for you just to be able to share some closing remarks and words to members of the audience.
Well, first of all, thank you, Ed, for the opportunity to be on this podcast. I love the work that you're doing. And anyone that would like for me to come and speak or play music, I'm available. I am retired. I can travel. So I love to see different parts of the country. I would love to do that. I'm going to close with one of the analogies that I use in one of my talks, and it's called the leadership radar. You know, if you're traveling down the highway and you're going 15, 20 miles over the speed limit, and a state trooper has that radar gun pointed on your vehicle, he's not going to miss it, is he? He's going to clock you. Mm-hmm. We need our leadership radars up at all times. Everywhere we go, everything we do, what can I do today to make me better? But most importantly, what can I do to help someone else along the way? And my leadership radar is up every single day. If I see someone that I can help, an encouraging word that I can say to someone, I have a couple of stories on that we don't even have time to tell, and you will too. If you just keep that leadership radar up and on all the time, looking for that opportunity, first of all, to be the best version of you that God created you to be. You know, it's amazing, Ed, the number of people in this country that never reach that potential because they never get to that leadership and personal development in their own lives. And once you reach that, the loving and leading of others is a natural progression of you leading yourself. And I'm grateful to get up every morning and see what God's going to do in my life. Who am I going to meet? Who can I help? And it's great. It's a great time to be alive, and anything that I can do to help anyone, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, thank you very much, David, for being on the Principal's Office. Been a very great show, great interview, very inspirational. Thank you for sharing your story and your message, words of encouragement. And I would like to thank everyone who has tuned in for this episode of the Principal's Office. Once again, we were just highlighting an educational stakeholder who's making a significant impact in education continuously. And just want everyone just to continue to support this broadcast, share this broadcast through your network on Facebook and LinkedIn and other social media platforms. And also tune in next week as we bring on another educational stakeholder who's making a significant impact in education. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you, David. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.